So today I want to talk to you about, well, first of all, fun fact about me, I actually really like rock music, and I used to listen to quite a bit of metal music. And when I was in my teenage years, I used to go even to a lot of metal concerts. So obviously most of my friends were listening to metal, and I came across a load of album covers. You know, the epic metal covers, the ones with the really muscly, chest naked men on the front of them, that were just like a little bit cringy, a little bit cheesy, you know the ones. So there is this a cycle of frescoes. There's a chapel in Orvieto, and since I was a kid, whenever I see this chapel, I think this is the origins of it all. This is the epic metal chapel. E poi la musichetta va fatta con la chitarra elettrica a seguire così. So at the turn of the century, turn of the century like from the 1400s to the 1500s, Luca Signorelli was commissioned a chapel in Orvieto. Now, first of all, Luca Signorelli is an artist he's had a kind of a difficult time throughout the century. So during the time he lived, he was recognized as being very, very good, and he was very, very successful. He also knew how to sell himself very well, okay? He made friends in all the right places. He was very good to work with. He was known for being very efficient and would get the job done very, very fast. In fact, even the chapel that we're talking about was painted in just a few years, which is unheard of at the time, to get a job done so fast. I'm telling you, in Italy, getting a job done fast is unheard of even today, okay? So he was definitely someone that managed to reap the fruits of his success even in his own lifetime. He was very influential on artists to come. Particularly Michelangelo is known to have gained a lot of his inspiration from him, and especially from the chapel that we're going to be talking about today. It was after his death, centuries after his death, that he started losing... Ooh, we're not going to be using this one. It was centuries after his death that he started to be doubted a little bit. In fact, some years ago, we had some very big experts in art history that kind of wanted to downplay how important he was and how good he was as a Renaissance artist. However, now he's kind of on the rise again, and we've had experts more in recent years that have started to really give him a place again, the place that he deserves within art history. Now, going back to his influence on Michelangelo, well, actually, let's take a few steps back and talk about who were Luca Signorelli's influences. So he trained under Piero della Francesca. Piero della Francesca is a major Renaissance artist, very important and influential on all the artists to come. And he taught many pupils that then became great artists. Following Piero della Francesca, he came to Urbino. Urbino was like a center where a lot of artists were coming through there because the patrons of that city, the leaders of that city were patrons of the arts. So a lot of great artists went through there. And it's thanks to this being really a melting pot for artists that Raphael came from this city and became a great of the Renaissance. And so Luca Signorelli spent time there. He also did work in the Sistine Chapel, okay, before Michelangelo came to the Sistine Chapel, okay. He spent time there, worked there, and worked alongside other great artists of the Renaissance. And so he really, by the time he reached his maturity in his 30s, he had kind of put together a lot of lessons, a lot of influences coming from all different directions, and he was able to translate them into his own kind of perspective, which made him very different from everyone else. So he took from everyone else, but he was also very different. What made him different? What made him different was his kind of very sculptural approach to painting, and this is definitely what Michelangelo will take from him. So his shadowing, he was very, very good at drawing, and his shadowing, his kind of really kind of clean-cut edges, his sculptural approach really made his work almost three-dimensional, okay? Also, something that makes him, characterizes him compared to other artists of his time. I don't know where I'm going to put all this, to be honest. I'm going to start, I'll do a little bit at a time, okay? All right, so something else that makes him different from other artists and that gets him a lot of gigs, to be honest, is also how theatrical he is. He's really good at being able to tell a story. So think of the reasons behind a lot of these artworks, of these works of art, why they're being commissioned in the first place, is often to tell stories, especially when we're inside churches, frescoes inside churches. You have to think in these days, we don't have television. Most people can't read or write. So these frescoes are entertainment, have entertainment purposes for the people that are going to see them. And they're also a way for the powers that are in place at the times to pass on messages, to make points, to give information, and to declare decisions that have been made in theology, in politics. So there's often behind these, even when there's most of the time it's religious stories that are being told, there's always a reason why that particular story has been told and the way it's been told, why it's been told in that way, basically. So the subject matter of these frescoes that we're going to be referring to today is Judgment Day, and it's the same subject matter that Michelangelo approaches 20 years later in the Sistine Chapel, which is kind of funny because in both cases the subject matter wasn't chosen by the painter. The choice of the painter is how to treat the subject matter, and Michelangelo will definitely look up to Luca Signorelli when treating this subject matter, and not just because it's the same subject matter, but because Luca Signorelli is definitely one of Michelangelo's favorites when it comes to painting, probably because of this really sculptural approach, especially to the human body. Now, first thing that I have to say, so when you come into this chapel, you walk in and you're surrounded by frescoes like 360 degrees, and there's also frescoes above you. Now, some of the frescoes that were done above are not done by Luca Signorelli. They were done 50 years before by Beato Angelico, and you can really see the difference. Beato Angelico is so much softer, he's more ethereal. Beato Angelico is a little bit like the painter, which is still a middle ground between late Gothic and the novelty of the Renaissance. So whilst he's very realistic in the features of the human beings and even the anatomy is correct, he's a lot more soft and ethereal. Whereas Luca Signorelli is full-blown, full bodies, muscle. I mean, like I said, totally an epic metal kind of moment going on here. As you go down along the walls are all done by Luca Signorelli. So, Judgment Day, we have Jesus at the top, which is he's lifting his hand and in the total Judgment Day fashion of I'm about to slap you mode. And that was painted by Beato Angelico. And underneath we have what is unfolding. So it starts off with a whole load of moments which are described in the Bible about what's going to happen during Judgment Day. And this is one of the moments where Luca Signorelli turns out to be just a perfect painter for this, because he's really telling the story. It's almost like a comic strip. Okay, so we have a guy that's dressed in purple and yellow with he looks a bit like Jesus, but he's not really Jesus. He's like Jesus with a perm, because he's got these Goldilocks hair going on. And he's got people gathered in front of him, and he's got the devil whispering in his ear. So that's the Antichrist, someone that people are gonna believe it's Jesus, but it's not actually Jesus, and it's the Antichrist, and that's why he's got, devil whispering in his ear. In the background, we've got a temple which has been attacked by like people that look a bit like ninjas for some reason, but it's basically the temple which is being attacked by a whole load of bad people. We have a bunch of religious people which are looking at scripture, counting the days on their fingers. Look at how funny it is how you've got the guys counting on their fingers the days that are leading up to Judgment Day. He can really, use these little details that help you really tell the story. So a bunch of other things that are happening which are referred to in scripture. We continue looking around the wall. You kind of go anti-clockwise and you start to see like buildings crumble because there's going to be earthquakes. There's all kinds of cataclysms. There's a solar eclipse with the moon passing in front of the sun. And then just past the entrance that you just came in from, you see, and this again, it gets really like totally epic metal. You have these devils which are firing like laser beams of fire down to earth, and people which are covering their ears to take refuge from what's going on. And it's like total fire and brimstone. He's really just depicting this in such a dramatic way. Can you imagine the people that are living in their bare homes coming into this church where the colors are so lively and everything is so dramatic? It's almost like a show that is being put on for them. I mean, you would have the fear of God put in you when you saw these pictures, okay? So if you weren't afraid of Judgment Day, you would be afraid now when you were seeing these things, just because it's so vivid and strong. And he even has some of the characters which are, he's painted some architectural elements and has the characters as if they're kind of stepping out of those architectural elements, almost like a Bansky thing going here. All right, so contemporary, so modern, even though we're talking about an artist that lived over 500 years ago. Okay, so and now we get to the part which is the most famous part of these frescoes, the ones that everyone comes to see, and the ones which were kind of shocking, okay? Because, and I assure you that if you go to this chapel, thank goodness that I've been telling you about everything you've seen on the left, because you won't notice it otherwise when you come in. All the things that I've been telling you about the Antichrist, when you walk into this chapel, you don't see them because your eyes are straight away brought to the right, to the scene that I'm going to talk to you about now, which is full of buttocks and boobs and naked bodies everywhere. Like, you're walking into this chapel in a cathedral, okay, in the 16th century, and you are just, your face is full of naked bodies. Just find yourself back in time right now, in a time in which it's not like today. There's no internet, there's no television. We're still coming out of a time in which the naked body is still today, it's not something that is accepted just normally out on the street. Imagine in those days. And now you've just got this mass of naked bodies on top of one another, just right at you like that on this big wall. Can you imagine how innovative that was and how shocking this was? Okay, 20 years later, Michelangelo will become famous for all these naked bodies inside this church, which is in Rome, and he will be attacked for this. The Catholic Church will be attacked for the fact that there are all these naked bodies inside the churches of the Catholic Church. The reason why you have maybe not heard about the chapel that we're talking about today is that what Michelangelo did 20 years later will the fame of that will overpower this. But if you'd been here in those years before the Sistine Chapel was painted by Michelangelo, this would have been all the talk of the town. This would have been something that the artists came to see. This would have been something that inspired Michelangelo, okay? Because people weren't used to seeing all this nakedness, but they were also not used to seeing all this attention to detail in the human anatomy. The artists coming up to this were still working on it. So not all artists were able to accomplish all the correct human body anatomy. It was still something that they were working at, and that made the fame of an artist when they were able to recreate these perfect human body anatomies. And now we've got a big wall, which is just covered with naked bodies, all in perfect, correct anatomy detail. and all in a tremendous number of different positions as well, which is difficult. It's difficult creating these bodies, not in just, a standing ancient Greek statue, David of Michelangelo position, or, sorry, it's this one, but, it's difficult to recreate them in these really complex positions with all kinds of foreshortening. And then again, the drama, because most of them are devils, or half of them are devils, and they are doing all these horrible things to all these human bodies. The concept is this is what's going to happen upon Judgment Day to the people that did wrong. And it's just, it catches your eye and you can't look away. Oh, by the way, sorry, before we reach the part with the devils, just before, we have another part of the wall, which is also full of naked bodies, but something else is happening there. And this is very important because we have all these naked bodies that are rising up from the ground. Some are still in skeleton shape. Some are forming and are becoming regular human beings and started off as skeletons. So he's been very good, and this is again why it's important that it's Luca Signorelli doing this, who's so good at telling stories through his artwork. We have these bodies which are rising from the ground as skeletons and slowly turning, their flesh is coming back and they're turning back into regular human beings. And some of them are rising from the ground as fully fleshed human beings. But they're all in good shape, in their prime of their years, beautiful human beings, then no children, no elderly people, okay? All beautifully, fully fleshed human beings, all right? This is very important because the reason why this subject matter was chosen, and by the way, it was chosen by a theologist who was also a clergyman of this church. And in fact, as you go in on the left, you see two men in black. Here come the men in black. Sorry, you have the two men in black that are a self-portrait of Luca Signorelli. There are two self-portraits of Luca Signorelli in this chapel. I'll tell you at the end of the video where you can find the other self-portrait, which is a lot more interesting than this one. So we have two self-portraits. One is him dressed in black here, and he is next to another man dressed in black. For a very long time, we thought that this was a portrait or was supposed to be Beato Angelico, the other artist that worked on the ceiling of this chapel. But we believe today that it was actually that theologian, the theologian that decided what was going to be the subject matter that was treated in this chapel. Now, why are we talking about this? Why are we talking and giving so much space to, in particular, this moment of Judgment Day? Because this is what we talk about the most. This is what the most attention has been given to in this room. Out of all the things happening on Judgment Day is the bodies coming back to fully flesh bodies, okay? Now, the Catholic Church says that when Judgment Day comes, everyone will be coming back with their bodies and will rise to the skies with our bodies. So we go to heaven, hopefully, when we die, but on Judgment Day, we all are reunited with our bodies and we go to heaven all in one piece. Now, today, people, maybe you don't, maybe you believe this like totally, and that's fine. But I would say that most Christians believe that this is more like metaphor. I think that I'm not sure what you believe, but I would say that a lot of Christians are not really concerned with how the literal way this is being said, okay? But in those days, people were concerned with this. Now, apart from the fact that we're living in years in which a lot of people are contradicting the theology and of the Christian church and how literal it is in what it believes, okay? And we'll talk about this a lot in other videos as well. And there are people who are actually asking themselves, but if the church says that this is going to happen, if I lose my leg, when I am reunited with my body and when we come all in one piece again, am I going to be without one leg? If I die when I'm 99, am I going to be with the body of a 99-year-old? How is this going to work? If I die in a fire, how does that work? So theologians of the time actually had to get together and make a decision on what was going to be the official story of the Catholic Church on what we're going to say to people. So it's because the Catholic Church, when it's being given these questions, has to come back and say, this is what's going to happen, okay? Because that's how it worked. You had to give answers, and you all had to be agreeing on the answer that you were going to be giving. So they agreed. Of course, they agreed that, luckily for us, we're all going to be coming back in the best shape possible. So if you're a child, you're going to be still like in your 20s when you come back. If you die a child, if you die in your 90s, you're also going to be coming back in your 20s. So we all come back in the best version of ourselves possible, hopefully having lost a bit of weight as well. So this was the theological comeback of the church to these questions. And it was a little bit like when you call a meeting, like a press conference, and you tell like what our version of the facts is. This is what we're saying. This is like the press conference of the church to tell people this is what is going to be. This is what the Catholic Church agrees is going to be like when Judgment Day comes and we come back to our fully fleshed bodies. So often he is actually invited to do these paintings because he is so good at telling a story. And at this time, the church, it's very important for the church to be able to tell stories in a very direct and comprehensible way, because it needs its followers to understand exactly what it is they are saying, okay? And this will become more and more important in the following years as the Reform starts, as we start to have different versions of Christianity. And we talked about this also a little bit on our video about olive oil. If you're wondering how is this connected, you can check it out. And so having artists like this is very important. And there's other works of art by Luca Signorelli that definitely show how good he is at kind of explaining these stories which he's being commissioned to explain. For those of you who have followed my ranting until the bitter end, you deserve to know where the second self-portrait of Luca Signorelli is within the fresco. So he actually portrays himself as a devil, with a blue devil with a horn, which is picking up and dragging away a very bosomy, naked, gorgeous young lady, which is, I imagine, how he hopes to end his days. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you can also see the parallel that is so obvious to me between the covers of epic metal albums and the frescoes in this church. And you understand why, for me, this will forever be the epic metal chapel. And I hope you enjoyed visiting this chapel with me. And if you ever decide to visit it in person, let me know when you come to Italy. The place is Orvieto, and there's also the best gelato in the world for me is the gelato shop in Orvieto. So hope to see you there, and remember to subscribe to the channel, and see you soon. Bye.